And this isn't the first time President Trump has tried to appeal to black voters. Perhaps you remember this.
Look how much African-American communities have suffered under Democratic control. To those I say the following: what do you have to lose by trying something new like Trump? What do you have to lose?
Memorable moment back in Michigan in 2016. Let's turn now to our panel. Joining me now is Jason Johnson. He's the politics editor at The Root. Laura Bassett is a senior political reporter at HuffPost. And William Cohan is a special correspondent at Vanity Fair. He has also authored the book, Why Wall Street Matters. Laura, let me start with you. I just want to play a clip here from Congressman Gregory Meeks. He was on Politics Nation on MSNBC this morning, and he explained why he will not be attending the State of the Union this week.
The best thing for me to do, I will be in the building. I will be in my office. I will be listening very attentively. I will go back to the media and to my constituents thereafter to give my response to what the president has to say. But for the sake of the institution, I cannot give this man who does not respect me the respect to be in that audience.
Okay. All right, Laura, so he joins now the ranks of more than half a dozen congressmen who are not going to be in the chamber for that speech. There's always an optical element to this. The State of the Union has its pageantry associated with it. Does it feel different to you this year when you look at the conversations about protests going into this particular speech?
Absolutely. I think it would be really interesting for black congressmen to have to sit in the audience and listen to Trump talk to them after Trump specifically said that people shouldn't be coming over from Haiti, shouldn't be coming over from African countries. I mean, how many years ago was it that white people literally dragged African Americans over here, or dragged Africans over here and forced them into slavery? And so it's so ironic to have a president now saying, we actually don't want immigrants from that country. It's just the most ignorant comment that a U.S. president really has ever made. And so I think that it's a pretty obvious move for them to not want to sit in the audience and listen to him talk.
Jason Johnson, I just want to get your take on this conversation about how to protest the State of the Union. There's been a long conversation over the last year about norms. What's normal, institutions and things that are normal in Washington, D.C., and how they might be having been eroded here over the last year. What do you make of folks opting not to go to this thing, which has become an institution, an annual thing that congressmen traditionally go to, whether or not somebody from their party is in power?
Well, David, I got to be honest with you. This isn't the first time that black members of Congress have had to listen to a racist talk to them for 90 minutes. We're talking about the history of this country. There have been black Congress people around for years. They had to listen to Reagan. They had to listen to Bush. They had to listen to Clinton, whose wife called black people super predators. Like, Donald Trump is not the first president to say things, or more importantly, to enact policies that are hostile to African Americans. So, look, if somebody doesn't want to go, they don't have to go. I generally think that you should attend the State of the Union, even if you are unhappy with what the president has to say. Fine, you turn your back on him, you don't stand up or something else like that. But I understand the people who don't want to go. What I think about is this, and I know this is difficult for some people to imagine. At some point, unless our entire democracy shatters, Donald Trump will not be president. And the last thing we want to do is let his inappropriate behavior and potential corruption erode the norms that we have lived by. Because I do want to see a day again where people are willing to go to the State of the Union, even for a president they don't respect and whose policies they abhor.
Bill Cohan, just want you to respond to that again on the issue of norms and what's changed here over the last year.
Well, I think Jason makes a lot of very good points. We are going to outlast Donald Trump. Whether we're going to see the first cracks through Mueller's investigation, what that might lead to, whether it takes till November of this year when perhaps Congress changes hands, to perhaps we have to wait till 2020 when people come to their senses and a real Democratic candidate can stitch together a winning electoral college victory. Don't forget, we made it through 8 years of George Bush somehow. We made it through 8 years of Ronald Reagan somehow. I'm old enough to remember that I wanted to move to Canada when Ronald Reagan got elected. So Ronald Reagan, people want to put on Mount Rushmore at the moment, but trust me, I lived through it. He was much more genial and even more intelligent than Donald Trump, which isn't saying a whole lot. But he was a disastrous president, and we had to endure it, and we will get through this.
Laura, I want to ask you just about what the White House has laid out here going into the speech, the themes that he's likely to talk about, also just the role of this speech, the usefulness of it. He's going to, I gather, talk about infrastructure. Well, he talked about that a year ago. How do you think this White House views the role of a speech like the State of the Union?
I think he views it like he views all of his rallies, just trying to get the approval of his base, which is getting increasingly small. But he knows exactly who he's talking to, and he knows the red meat that he needs to throw at them in order to keep them applauding for him in their houses. And so I think it's going to be a divisive speech. I think it's going to focus a lot on immigration and the wall, and I don't think it's going to do a lot to set forth an agenda that means anything.
Bill Cohan, last question to you. You focus on the economy a lot in your writing on the markets as well. This is something the president has been touting as an accomplishment of the last year. I look at his Twitter feed from this morning. Jay-Z was in conversation with Van Jones yesterday on CNN. This morning, the president tweeted, "Somebody please inform Jay-Z that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be at the lowest rate ever recorded." There's a long tail to a lot of these things. What do you make of the way that he talks about the economy and the effectiveness of this kind of rhetoric, talking about where we are economically in the country?
I think he's on very dangerous ground, frankly. If he wants to start taking credit for low unemployment, if he wants to start taking credit for a high stock market, he's going to have to also take credit when those things start reversing. And it's inevitable. This has been a 10-year or 9-year bull market, right? This has been a 9-year or 10-year decrease in the unemployment rate. These have long tails, as you said, and so let's see if if Mr. Trump is still boasting about his performance in the stock market and unemployment when things start turning around the other way.
Jason, lastly to you there, I saw you shaking your head there as we saw the president taking on Jay-Z.
Look, President Trump, give me a call when black unemployment is not still higher than the national average. Give me a call when black unemployment is still not twice the national average of white Americans. Stop taking credit for stuff you haven't done. And the president is notorious for this, but I am sick and tired of politicians claiming that a life of relative economic mediocrity, where we are still systematically locked out of dozens of professions and levels of education and loans, is something that black people should be cheering about. He said, what have we got to lose? And we've seen it with a white nationalist president whose policies may be temporarily beneficial to this economy, but long term, because of his Department of Justice and several other moves he's made, will not benefit the vast majority of African Americans or anybody else in this country.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Jason Johnson, thank you very much. My thanks to Laura Bassett and William Cohan as well. And still ahead, the starts.